What screams this person peaked in high school to you? Story 1. Not quite the same, but it's weird. But my husband's ex likes to reminisce constantly about their time in high school. Though she doesn't explicitly say it was when they were dating, just heavily implied because I know their history and she's aware of that. She hijacks the conversation to specifically only something they could talk about almost every time, or is just the three of us, and sometimes even in front of her husband, married happily for a long time with kids. It has really weird and possessive feeling to it. Story 2. There's a tiny independent breakfast joint near a large HS where I used to live in my late 20s. It has all the HS team photos and jerseys, mascot stuff displayed there. I asked the waitress why other East Side schools weren't represented, and she, late 60s, apparently cheered for that nearby high school, and was irritated that I would even mention her rivals. Story 3. Parents who force their kids into travel sports and live vicariously through them. On a further note, I'm a hairstylist. The last salon I worked at, during prom season, the moms would also schedule makeup and updo appointments for themselves, all while their daughters would get done. Story 4. My hometown is an extremely affluent suburb outside of a major city. The kids that peaked in high school are still somehow peaking. They all went to great schools, working in finance banking, and have married each other and moved back to the town. It's really bizarre. Story 5. I would never attend a high school reunion. Those people were absolutely horrible to me. I was bullied relentlessly, verbally and physically on a daily basis from grades 7, 12. But I sometimes have a funny little fantasy of going to one of these reunions. You see, the girl everyone bullied so much moved to the other side of the world, got multiple degrees in a second language and a power career. She is now the very slim and stylish one, while the bullies are all pudgy and living in the same ho-dunk town in shithole USA and have accomplished nothing besides breeding excessively and joining MLMs. I'd make an amazing entrance looking glamorous and sophisticated, tell a few smug stories about my jet-set life and smile condescendingly at all of the people who abused and tortured me. Then leave early and go somewhere worthwhile. But it's a fantasy, and I'll never do it. I would never use money to travel there, and hours of international travel time. These people aren't even worth the time it would take to one-up them. I think I'll just keep living my life with the knowledge that they were actually the losers all along. Story 6. People who act normal in a setting of 2 or 3 people, but once a gathering is bigger, they start bragging. Also, if someone of the opposite sex enters the equation, it doesn't matter how small the group is. They try to make everything into a bragathon, boast, Olympics. People, usually guys with this type of personality, are extremely disloyal. They will fuck you over, even for a tiny possibility of a win. Story 7. Why aggressive anti-intellectualism and xenophobia. You bump into them back home when you're visiting your folks and they flat out insult you for having escaped the nest, got an education, got a good job. Ha ha ha, you still living in that city, university boy? You must love living with all them queers and foreigners, eh? While they sit in the same bar in the same town, with the same 2 mates, chugging the same beers and getting into fights over the same girls exactly like they did 20 years ago. Story 8. Guy in Germany back in 1976 was always talking about his HS football coach giving skull stickers if they disabled an opposing team's player, on and on about how vicious his team was. Someone finally asked the obvious, "How many stickers were on your helmet?" "Oh, I wasn't on the team. I kept up with equipment and washed towels and stuff." At least he was honest. Story 9. As a man, when other men find young, barely legal girls attractive, I think if you mature appropriately, you find women who have also matured and are doing something with their life extremely attractive, and those who have not, or not yet due to age, not. I'm also counting recognizing the obvious damage that porn does to your brain perception of women, and therefore not watching it, as a man as part of that maturing appropriately thing. I don't think properly mature men carry pornography addictions. Simple as. Story 10. At my age of 83, look back at the senior rating, and those that were slated to fail, or low expectation, did quite well percentage-wise. Those that were expected to do great things, most of them failed. Think looking back through all those years kind of spells it out. That includes the fact that those that were expected to do great things had parents that had money and already had achieved. So they already had a head start, and because of it, they got all the rewards from our school and colleges and still had a poor percentage of those that excelled. Story 11. People who peaked in HS most likely had a coach or mentor then and need one again. and never made it into life with a mentor. I know a 40-yo dude with a life coach, and I kinda chuckle when I think about it. However, I can directly point at that life coach and show what this dude has accomplished just because he has the coach in his corner pushing him. A lot of people don't have an internal motivating ability. I just had a broken home growing up, and it motivates me enough to overachieve so I don't have a broken up as an adult. Story 12. I graduated from a small town school with 72 in my class. The hotshots and popular students, many of them. Nobody knows where they are now. For the ones we are aware of, they are still living in that small town and have not amounted to much of anything. The losers and nobodies, me included, went on to have successful lives, not grand, but doing way better than they are. Story 13. I knew a girl who would preheat the microwave. The first time I saw her do that, I asked her what she was doing, thinking she couldn't possibly be doing what I thought. When she told me, I tried to gently tell her that wasn't how microwaves work. That hit an instant trigger with her, and she snapped at me. That is what my dad does, and he said it should be done, as if that somehow settled the science of it all. Story 14. Still works medial job 30 years later, hasn't changed their appearance, is sure to insert into every conversation how important they are, probably kinda bossy too, just to assert dominance, because it makes them feel more accomplished than they actually are. Probably gossips like crazy, even as an adult in inappropriate environments, i.g., work. Overall, just stuck up as hell, thinks their shit don't stink. Ever meet someone like that? I sure do. Many, and their insecurities couldn't be more clear if they wrote them on their foreheads. Story 15. This seems to be making light of people's lives that get worse after they were a minor. I don't see why the comments are so excited to see kids or recent kids fail. Do you really have such bad attested development that you forgot they were children? Even the ones that may have seemed like they had too much or made you feel like you had too little. These are children we're talking about. And gleefully talking about how they crashed and burned once they became adults is very cringe. Story 16. The talk about stories from high school that A. never happened because you weren't there to verify or deny them. B. They are always the hero in every story. C. The stories are all about moments in school. Worst part is the guy I knew truly believes his own stories. Prime example, he fought our class psycho who pulled a knife on him. Well said, psycho doesn't have a knife and he definitely would have been expelled. Was this guy a close friend at one point? Yes. Was this guy an athlete? Nope, he was in the band. Drummer boy to be precise. Story 17. I know a group of people that went to my high school that never seemed to branch out. They never made a single new friend. I know to each their own, but I find that completely weird. I have so many great friends from high school, college, and different jobs that I still see and talk to frequently. I have a large mix of friends, but only a few really close ones. It's been almost 10 years since graduation, and this group still hangs out almost every single weekend. Almost all of them went to the same college together and lived in the same house. Now they're even starting to marry each other. They'll start dating the sisters or cousins of their friends. Not a single person in their circle is new. I may be judging, but I find it totally bizarre. Story 18. It's kind of niche, but I notice it with some military veterans. Their whole identity revolves around the fact that they served and literally nothing else. To me, it just screams that their greatest achievement prior to joining the military was going to state for wrestling or football, and now the military is their latest thing. They latch onto because they can't develop a personality. Story 19. I went to a funeral last year. The deceased was elderly, and one of his former high school buddies, who was a local minister, did the service. This man in his 80s was bragging about his high school baseball achievements instead of saying anything much about the deceased guy. Story 20. Bruh, I peaked in junior high. I was an honor roll student and ran the model UN competition at my school. I got to bang the gavel and everything. Then the depressive symptoms hit, and I dropped out of high school. Fast forward through a GED, a BPD, and an ADHD diagnosis. A plethora of shitty service industry jobs, never could hold down the same job for more than a few months. And now I'm teaching English, reading off PowerPoints, in Thailand with a fake bachelor's degree diploma. It's been 3 months and so far I've only called in sick twice, so that's a huge improvement, but still. I missed junior high and that's just fucking sad. Story 21. There was a post on Reddit the other day in the ITA thread. Guy was popular in high school, girl wasn't. They get together years later and he acts like she should be thrilled to date the popular guy. She tells him no one cared about the popular kids in high school. He gets mad saying she ruined his memories. Like legit mad because his memories of being worshipped were all in his own head. Story 22. I worked at a place once where the COO was an Oxford alumnus and proudly had captain of the rowing team on his LinkedIn profile. Yes, I get that it's a fairly prestigious and historic position, but you're a C-level exec at a city financial services company, FFS. And yes, he really was an intellectual lightweight, a jock who peaked as an undergrad. I'm sure he's terribly confident and comes off well, but he really is just a guy who looks good in a suit. Story 23. Who am I who certainly didn't peak professionally and saw literally half the world in the years after, and had recognized achievements and fulfilling relationships after high school, but never really again felt so complete, or at peace, and in my element, as back in high school? I had great friends with whom I did crazy, memorable things or just relaxed playing WoW. Now I have even more amazing human beings, well-adjusted, and I can count on them for anything as long as it isn't anything crazy. I was in a toxic relationship, but never felt so wanted physically, because of the constant exposure to the attention of many girls in a non-professional work environment, which was more intimate than clubbing. I am giving back to the community even now, but back then it felt more special volunteering and people praised me more for less. Now it rarely feels enough. Lastly, my academic achievements felt more earned and nicer, more clean in the sacred way, and more diverse because of the different subjects. While at work, there is this constant taint on my achievements because of office politics, profits, I was raised in a commie household, and specialization over broadness. I just felt more a human being, and less a sterilized drone back in high school. I don't know if that counts as peaked in high school. Story 24. A guy who still thinks anyone cares how many women he's slept with. Usually tends to be the type who was a popular jock or badass rebel, who was all about living in the moment and didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the future. Then he finished school, or if he was lucky, he might have been able to keep that *T going through college, only to realize he has no money, few job prospects, and is probably living away from most of his friends. And strangely, the ladies just don't seem to care about him anymore. Story 25. I had a colleague who was in his 40s, and he would complain about the people who would come into our office and present their issues, and he actually said at one point they try to turn their problems into mine, and I had to break to him that we are in IT support, and that for as long as we are at work, our customers' problem are indeed our problems. Story 26. When they're still acting like a cool kid, as an adult, have an air of superiority and can't figure out why people aren't more accommodating or respectful of them. I've seen it so many times, especially in a workplace context. They genuinely believe that they are owed something from others, literally for being popular in high school LOL. It's so embarrassing and sad to see in full-grown adults. Story 27. I driving around in the same exact car they had in high school that was considered cool, 80s Camaro, 3000 GT, Civic SI, Supra, STI, etc., but it is broke down with a bunch of garbage upgrades, old huge wing, terrible peeling paint job, Walmart sport seat covers, faded no-PI stickers. Story 28. Dude drives a car that's out of his actual budget ranged. At closer look, it's just an obsessively older model. Dyes the hair to hide the gray and smells like he takes baths in skincare products. His forehead is suspiciously unwrinkled, and his shin seems to have changed. He has the haircut of a cool kid from yesteryear, the tats that was the shit a decade ago. He brags about all the ass he is bagging nearly right after hello. It's also usually the guy that had the early growth spurt and insisted to test his ninja skills on people. 2-3 decades later, he is still the same size and the runt. He just can't see it. This type of person, I mean all to their own, but some just never find themselves and end up turning doing my own thing to posing and being idiots. Story 29. My brother's wife whenever high school is brought up. I graduated early at 16, but really I dropped out and got my GED because I thought I was more mature than everyone else and didn't like the drama of high school, and there was nothing more I could learn that I couldn't teach myself. Now she continues to be the most dramatic, antagonistic, and judgmental adult I have ever known. All her major identity-forming achievements seem to be between the ages of 15 and 18, then an affair, now her painful marriage to my brother. I'm not going to lie and say he's an angel. However, he may be an asshole, but she's still a monster.